Change requires change, and it often necessitates a shift in behavior because it's the outward manifestation of our habits, our attitudes, and our beliefs. Hello, 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 and welcome to More Than Money, a podcast where we have nuanced conversations about money, business, and life, where we take the time to explore the human side of money because success with money is never just about the numbers. I'm your host, Jacquette Timmons, and I am really, really glad that you have taken the time to join me today. So, whether this is your very first episode or one of many, thank you again for being here. And before we dive into today's episode, I know that I have extended invitations to explore working with me, whether that's in a one on one coaching capacity or joining us for our biannual pricing masterclass. And it's called Pricing Made Human. But I haven't actually taken the time to describe what it is like to work with me. So stay tuned for an upcoming episode where I am going to do just that. But in the meantime, let's get into today's show. As you might imagine, when people reach out to me, they do so because they want to explore working together because they want to make something different, right? They want some change of some sort. And after our discovery call, I send in a follow-up email. And I do that because I often find that it is useful to see on paper what was discussed during our call. And so toward the end of that email is this sentence, and it always feels weird to quote yourself, but it's this sentence, quote, "Because I know that making changes, even when you initiate it, can kick up some resistance," end quote. I'm bringing it up because it is now officially spring for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. And while each season is a marker of change of some sort, spring in particular brings with it a palpable sense of renewal, rebirth, and growth. It serves as a symbolism of new beginnings. But the start of spring isn't the only reason new beginnings are on my mind. I finally did something my CPA has wanted me to do for years. I finally made the switch to QuickBooks Online. Now, your reaction to hearing this breaking news from me very well might be whoop-de-doo. You might also be wondering, what in the world does this have to do with you? Short answer, a lot. Especially if we look at my experience of making this decision as a metaphor of how you and I tend to relate to change in general, and especially when it comes to money and money related things. And for those of you who don't know, I've been in this game for a little bit of time. I started my business in 1995, and that was when I started using Quicken Deluxe. And while we have come a long, long way from installing the software via a disk, my CPA has grown increasingly dissatisfied with the reports or the quality of the reports that it generated. I, on the other hand, I love using Quicken Deluxe, and I'll just refer to it as QD from here on out. And I love using it because it allowed me to track my financial data for both my business and my personal finances in a single app. And after nearly 30 years, I have grown extremely comfortable navigating this software. Plus, I had my expenses categorized exactly how I wanted them to be. In other words, QD had that old, comfortable slipper feel to it. My familiarity with QD made me feel safe, and I really liked the security, quote unquote, that came from knowing that there was a digital repository that preserved my financial history going all the way back to 1995. And so I admit that I was really, really stuck because even though I heard my CPA's frustrations and I knew that my being tied to this particular tool was making his job more difficult than it needed to be, I did not make this switch from QD to QuickBooks Online without some reluctance. But like I mentioned at the top of the episode, to bring it full circle, even the change that we want isn't always easy to navigate. And if you are a client or a prospect hearing this, the irony of what I am sharing is not lost on me. So, yes, I do get, and I got a chuckle out of observing my own words kind of ricochet back to me. This transition to QuickBooks Online definitely kicked up some resistance, not only for me, but from me. But you know what? Now that I've done it, I am so, so glad I finally did it. Oh, the irony. And what was also reinforced for me was the reminder that change requires change, that change often necessitates a shift in behavior because behavior is really an outward manifestation of our habits, of our attitudes, and of our beliefs. And I am saying our because I know that you can relate. I know that you too have had the experience of being fully aware that something needed to change, that you've had the experience of resisting it perhaps at first, finally doing it, and then eventually embracing what you initially resisted. And I know this because, well, that's just how humans often behave. Plus, there is something called the 6 stages of change because, there is a model for darn near everything. And I'm going to share those stages with you and I'm going to talk about them, although I'm going to do that as I experienced them. So if you want a more in-depth definition or description of each stage, you know what you got to do. Go ask Google. But here's the first stage. It's called pre-contemplation. And at this stage, you are not yet considering change, or you may even be unaware or in denial of the need for change. And for me, that wasn't entirely my case. I was simply having the adult version of a toddler's "I don't wanna" tantrum. I was considering it simply because I was being prompted, nudged, whatever word you want to use, by my CPA. So I was aware of it. I was in partial denial. I just wasn't ready for it. So that's the first stage, pre-contemplation. The next one is contemplation. My tax deadline is March 15th for my business. That means that my tax package needs to be, or is due, I should say, to my CPA by February 15th. And man, I was so proud of myself because I submitted everything early. And when I say everything, I'm talking about both my business and my personal information. All of that was uploaded into the repository that they have before February 15th. That proud feeling, though, eventually waned after a couple of weeks passed, and after a series of emails, texts, and phone calls that made it very, very clear that I really have tested my CPA's patience, and I really needed to snap out of it. So I was aware of the need for change and could no longer delay taking action. The third stage is preparation. Once I made the commitment to switch to QuickBooks Online, I then mapped out a work plan for connecting all of my accounts, reviewing the migrated data to review and assign and add categories, especially since, you're going from one platform to another. And so not everything gets migrated exactly the same way. And also, the other thing that was a really interesting awareness that I did not have until afterward is that the migration was not based on a calendar year. It was based on a fiscal year. So it was March to March, not January to December. So I needed to manually upload some statements because of that. So a combination of needing to manually upload statements, and then also making sure that the right categories had been assigned to, the particular transactions, and then sometimes even adding categories because of just how I think and how I track things. All of that needed to be done, and all of that was a part of the preparation stage. The next stage is action. That's the fourth stage. And for me, taking action had several dimensions to it. The most obvious one was first signing up for QuickBooks Online. But then the second was doing what I've just kind of described real quickly, which was reviewing the data that I made mention to, the data that automatically came in, the data that I had to manually add, and then embracing that I was moving on and using a new tool. And interestingly enough, giving myself permission to admit that I actually liked it. That brings us to the fifth stage, maintenance. I would say that I am still at the nascent stage of this stage when it comes to QuickBooks Online for myself. Because since my accounts are now connected and everything is designed to sync automatically, I won't have to track and review my financial data as I did previously. Instead, I'm going to need to create new behaviors for doing these activities that are in line with how my new tool operates. And I can already see that this new tool is going to make this process easier, faster, and I guess it goes to say a little less time consuming. But that brings us to the sixth stage, and it's called termination. And this is the stage where you've successfully integrated a new behavior and you have created guardrails that prevent you from reverting back to your old behavior. Well, given the nature of this particular change for me, I'm probably already here. So, as a quick recap, the six stages are pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action. And I love the fact that they separate preparation from action because it's like, what do you need to do before you do something? Maintenance and termination. But this brings me to a question for you. What's your new beginning? And when you think about those stages that I've just outlined, at what stage are you based upon these six stages that I've just shared? Earlier, I mentioned, if not directly, then I inferred how my feelings of comfort, safety, and security were holding me back from making this switch. But here's the kicker. QuickBooks Online isn't new to me. Many of my clients use it. So I have experience with the software via using it by way of their accounts. And yet it still felt like unfamiliar territory when it came to utilizing it for me and my business. And thankfully, and I know my CPA is very, very happy about this, I eventually got out of my own way. But I share this because the truth is that behavioral and attitudinal change is a process that unfolds over time. And while I'm glad I finally made the change, I recognize that I needed that space. I needed that time. and you might need it too. And you and I need that space in order for us to actually face and to deal with the triggers that come up, like the fear of the unknown, like not wanting to let go of what feels comfortable and familiar, which might mean losing control, not wanting to, or I shouldn't say not wanting to, the trigger might be that you may need to redefine risk. What does that look like? What does that feel like? The trigger might be recognizing that we actually do have an emotional attachment to what was, and so much so that it delays how you move forward. Not only how, and not only from a pace standpoint, but how you like literally embody not just the action of moving forward, but embody the process of moving forward. And I could probably go on and on and on and on with other examples. I won't. I'll spare you of that. But here's the point of all of this. It's springtime, y'all. So let the rejuvenating spirit of the season of spring spill over to your finances, both business and personal. Let the energy and the vitality of the season prompt you to A, revisit your financial goals and strategies, B, confirm if you are really spending your money in the way that you think you are. And if you are feeding your goals, if you are new here, you will get accustomed to me saying, because I say it often, there is probably a financial component to every goal that you have, and you need to feed those goals on an ongoing basis from the money that you have now. So, taking this moment to tap into, again, the energy and the vitality of the season is a way of really checking in to see if you were doing that. It's also an opportunity to clean up any financial clutter and ensure that your important documents are up to date in the event that something significant changed in your life or in your business from last tax season to this season, if you will. And it's also an opportunity to evaluate your flow of money so that you can compare your Q1 results to what you forecasted. And finally, this is a great time to plant the seeds for your future financial growth. And if you want help with any of this, let's have a discovery call. So send me a DM on Instagram and we can explore where you are, where you want to go, and how I could possibly help you. And before I hop, let me add a bonus one here in terms of why and how this is a really good time to just kind of look at things. The stock market is on fire right now. If you have an investment portfolio, you are probably very pleased with your current balances. And so this is the perfect time to rebalance your portfolio and bring it back in alignment with whatever your target allocation was or is. Because whatever it was, it has definitely been out of whack unless you've been rebalancing it on a monthly basis, which not a lot of people do. So that means that probably now is a really good time to do that so that you are not over, emphasized or optimized in one area, an area that you didn't want to be, and under in another area that you didn't want to be. So, with that, my friends, happy spring. That is it for today's show. As always, thank you for listening. And if you are at this point, thank you for listening all the way into the end. If you would like to show appreciation for this podcast or perhaps this particular episode, I would love it if you would do me the favor of sharing it so that we can reach more people than we ever would be able to on our own. And if you happen to be listening on Apple Podcast, please take a moment to leave a rating and a review. A, we do read them, and B, it helps with the algorithm. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in there. Please leave a comment below. And as always, if you'd like to buy me a coffee, you can do that by going to buymeacoffee.com/Jacquette. Again, buymeacoffee.com/Jacquette. I'll be back with another episode, and I hope that you will too. Until then, remember, it's about more than money.